Bine v-am găsit, dragi telespectatori, în această emisiune, din nou, o ediție specială, Raport European, emisiune înregistrată de prietenii noștri de la European Coalition for Israel, de obicei în Bruxelles, în Parlamentul European, sau în Anglia, sau în Finlanda, și în această săptămână o ediție realizată de ei, înregistrată într-un studio al televiziunii TV7 din Helsinki. Gazda acestei emisiuni, Thomas Handel, președintele în funcțiune și fondatorul lui European Coalition for Israel, avându-i ca invitați pe Gregory Lafitte, reprezentantul ECI la Națiunile Unite, și pe Dan Ashbel, ambasadorul ambasadorul Israelului în Finlanda și Estonia. Discuția pe care vă supunem atenție este una legată de spiritul antisemit care se ridică în Europa. E un fenomen larg, nu numai în țările în care ambasadorul Dan Ashbel este ambasador al Israelului în Estonia și în Finlanda, nu numai în aceste țări, dar în întreaga Europa este un spirit antisemit care se ridică. Spunem și comentam acest lucru în mai multe emisiuni Alfa, Omega TV. Exemplele pe care le dau ei se focalizează și pe Franța, unde acest spirit cred că a atins un punct critic, și alte țări europene. Franța, pentru că în Franța locuiește în prezent o importantă comunitate evreiască. Veți afla lucruri inedite dintr-o perspectivă mai largă europeană. Mulțumim Domnului că ne dă ocazia să vă prezentăm periodic aceste emisiuni sub genericul Raport European. Altfel ne-ar fi foarte greu să le aducem sau să le realizăm noi, cei de la Alfa, Omega TV, dar iată că prin această colaborare cu European Coalition for Israel avem ocazia ca măcar o dată pe lună ele să vă fie prezentate, mai ales în aceste vremuri când pe fondul migrației din zona musulmană, evident, spiritul antisemit este în creștere. Și nu numai pe fondul acesta. E un fenomen care s-a accentuat treptat în ultimii ani în Europa. E important să știm, să vedem, să înțelegem și să ne rugăm. Așadar, o ediție specială, Raportul European despre ridicarea și creșterea spiritului antisemit în Europa, realizată de prietenii noștri de la European Coalition for Israel și prezentată dumneavoastră în cadrul acestui spațiu Calea Adevarul și Viața. Dumnezeu să vă binecuvânteze.
Welcome to the European Report. This is the program where we discuss issues related to the Middle East, but from a European perspective. Most months you see us from the studio in the European Parliament, but this month, as it is August, we and the European Parliament are on recess. We are here in the studio of TV7 in Helsinki. And with us on the program, we have the Israeli ambassador to Finland, Ambassador Dan Ashbel, and our UN director, Gregory Lafitte from Paris, France. Ambassador Ashbel, you have been in Finland soon for 4 years. What is your impression of this country?
Well, you know, this is, first of all, just to make things straight, I'm ambassador both to Finland and to Estonia, and I've been here now almost 4 years, and it always depends on what time of the year it is. I mean, as everybody says, the summer in Finland is wonderful, but it depends. You have a year where you have some weeks of summers, and then you have a year like the first year when we were here, where the summer was one Thursday afternoon in August. But all in all, it is a different experience for me, and an interesting experience. And basically, after 4 years, you get to learn the place, and you know the place, and you enjoy it.
And what about you, Gregory? You've been here just for a few days. You live in the south of France, and you also have a base in Paris. What is your impression of this country?
Well, I mean, it's always a pleasure to be in Helsinki and to come to Finland. I'm always impressed how green it is. So it's a great pleasure to be here, and it's always great to have different kinds of weather during the summer. So wonderful.
Yes. We couldn't agree more as Finns, but we have to discuss some more serious questions in this program. It's not all about the weather and how lovely it is in Finland. When we look at Europe, we see some troubling signs on the horizon. And there's in particular one country which has been in the news a lot in the last few years, actually, and that is, of course, France, your country, Gregory. And are things as bad as they look from the outside in France? What is your experience of the rise of anti-Semitism in France?
Yes, well, I think we can say that it's sadly, I think we can say it's a reality. I was quite surprised, I would say, 3-4 years back to discover that it was becoming again a reality in France. We all know the history of anti-Semitism in France. The more I think about it, the more I'm sad to realize that things have not changed that much from even from the late 19th century, when we all know about the affair Dreyfus, Alfred Dreyfus in French, and I'm not sure things have dramatically changed. I mean, of course, what has changed that we know what happened, and so we are more careful, and I think also the big difference is the government realizes that something terrible is happening with this rise of anti-Semitism. But we've seen it in different ways. It's been through this comedian Dieudonné, through terrible attacks that there have been many attacks, and not we've talked a lot about the attacks on the Charlie Hebdo and the Hypercacher in January, but there's been even just a month before that there were attacks in the Paris suburbs, which were absolutely terrible. And I think that there's really something there. I would even say some kind of root of anti-Semitism, which is terrible when you consider what happened more than 120 years ago. I mean, I thought Dreyfus, his degradation as a military, happened in 120 years ago in January. And I think it's still troubling to me, because I'm trying to study all this history to try to understand it. And when we see what happened concerning Dreyfus, there was this anti-Semitism in intellectual circles in Paris, and one of them was Edmond de Goncourt, which is the name of the famous literary prize. Yeah. And so there's something there that is really troubling.
Yeah. And Ambassador Ashbel, you live in a country which has been considered by many as one of the best friends of Israel and a safe country. Is this the case still today? Is there any anti-Semitism or any signs of anti-Semitism in Finland?
I think one should look at this country from a different perspective, since it has practically a short history of Jews living here. I mean, Jews settled in Finland only at the mid of the 19th century, so they live here somewhere around 200 years. They have never been a large community, definitely not even resembling the size of the community in France. At their height, there have been 2,000 Jews in Finland, and now the community counts, if you're optimistic, 1,300. So this is not a large community. They never were a large community. And but on the other hand, I believe that there are developments in recent years that call themselves anti-Zionists, but they basically are against Jews, and therefore they are anti-Semitic, and they exist. They exist with a different background, but again, they use the same slogans. I mean, they delegitimize issues that are connected to Israel. They delegitimize the connection between Jews and Israel. And with this, they let also the community here fear insecure. And the events that happened earlier this year in Copenhagen, for example, and also in Paris, as was mentioned earlier, gave the Jewish community here also their thoughts of their security. And the fact that Jews nowadays all over Europe, and this includes Finland, have to be careful if they walk with a kippah on their head or with the Star of David as part of a necklace. This is something that is worrying, and it exists also here, not in the same magnitude as in other countries, and I would not brand Finland as a country where anti-Semitism is a major issue, but it is an issue that causes concern to the Jewish community here, yes, definitely.
Mr. Ambassador, would you like to comment? We just had a recent event here. There was an exhibition, a thematic day, which were to emphasize values such as solidarity, anti-racism, and globalism. And sadly, one organization were not able to participate, and that organization was from Israel.
Yeah, well, you refer to the World Village Festival, which is an event, an annual event, basically organized by NGOs, and was this year dedicated to the environment and to the Middle East. And one of the Israeli best-known organizations that is an NGO that exists for over 100 years, actually 106 years, is the Calea Adevarul, which is actually the national fund that was founded still by the Zionist movement in order to enable the settlement and of Jews in the Holy Land. In Palestine at the time, still during the Turkish period, going through the British period, and since the establishment of Israel. And this organization is participating as an NGO in many events around the world because it contributes a lot to the environment. You know that Israel is the country in which more trees exist now than they existed 20 or 30 years ago. Keren Kayemet is doing a lot in this respect. Keren Kayemet is also doing a lot in preserving water, in supplying water, and actually is an environmental NGO with a lot of experience that it shares also with other countries in the world. Now, last year, Keren Kayemet participated in this World Village Festival, and this year, after an initiative of an anti-Israeli, I would say clearly anti-Israeli organization led by a certain person who is even stronger than anti-Israeli. All kinds of libels were brought in front of the organizers, and they, without checking and without verifying if the allegations are true, decided not to accept the Keren Kayemet Israel, or as it's called in its abbreviations, KKL, decided not to accept the organization, alleging that this organization is involved in uprooting people from their land, and all kinds of other allegations, which, by the way, all are not true. Some of them came in front of Israeli courts and were decided in favor of Keren Kayemet. Others are questions that are, you know what, in dispute, yes. But nobody ever decided that Keren Kayemet took something from somebody. And I believe that the influence of those who deny Israel's right to exist, they are behind it. It is not that they have something with Keren Kayemet. It is their denial, and it is close to an anti-Semitic attitude because it does not give Israel the chance of being a country like any other country. It demands from Israel things it doesn't demand from anybody else, and it demands from Keren Kayemet things they don't demand from anybody else. They claimed, for example, that they were distributing maps of Israel that did not include the Green Line of 1949. Actually, during the World Village Festival that took place, the Palestinians distributed maps of Palestine that does not include Israel. And nobody stopped them. So this is again an example of a double standard, and it is very sad. I think that the visitors of the World Village Festival lost something, and I think it hurt more the organizers and put them in a very bad position than it hurt the Keren Kayem.
Yes. This is something we've been discussing many times before, and sadly what we see at the forefront of many of these organizations are sadly Christians. And I believe that's something that we need to address also as European Coalition for Israel. Gregory, we were together in Jerusalem just a few weeks ago at a global forum against anti-Semitism. And what we heard, of course, is that there are many forms of anti-Semitism today. It's not only the old-fashioned Nazism or skinheads, but there's a variety. And the BDS and these type of attempts to demonize Israel are growing on our university campus and in academia. You're a professor yourself. Is there anything that you would like to share with the viewers from this global summit in Jerusalem, or perhaps your own experience from academia?
Well, yes, I think at first I must say that it's quite sad that we still need to have a global forum for combating anti-Semitism. It takes place every 2 years, and that we would still need that today is very sad for me. The good news is I think that the international community really understands that there is a problem and that it needs to be dealt with. So there were many representatives from many nations and from different governments and even from the United Nations. I must say that this year was quite particular for that, in a global level for combating anti-Semitism, which because there was this special event at the UN to discuss the rise of anti-Semitism, and it was actually planned last November, so it had nothing to do with the attacks in January or February in Copenhagen. So yes, people are talking about it and trying to see what is really happening and how we can do something about it and how we can combat it. So many wonderful statements there. I think we still need to really see how we can. I think what we have tried to do for a number of years hasn't worked somehow. If we look at what is happening today, and I would say from my personal perspective, I think what we need to do is instead of preaching tolerance, we need to explain everything that the Jewish people, the Jewish culture has brought us, has all the wonderful things that we take for granted sometimes, that we've received from the Jewish culture and learn from this, and I think that's the best antidote to anti-Semitism. But of course there would be many other things to say on this global forum. Yes.
No, that's very good, and I hope it's music to your ears, Mr. Ambassador, that we not only want to tolerate the Jewish people and everything that Israel stands for, but actually celebrate Judaism and Jewish thoughts. Looking at Europe today, and I know you've been based in many capitals in Europe, and you've been in Vienna, I think you've been in other capitals as well, that gives you a European outlook on anti-Semitism, on the situation in Europe. When you look at the situation today in 2015, what do you see outside of Europe, and not only focusing on France?
Well, I see a phenomena that returns to the kind of slogans and the kind of attitude that delegitimizes the existence. Now, if it was in the past delegitimizes the Jews as such, it tries to delegitimize Israel as such. And in this, the Jews are a package, they are part of the package, and the problem is that these people, they claim they are for peace, but they're far away from being for peace, because if they would be for peace, they would call for both sides to do something, they would call for both sides to find a way, but actually what they're looking for is to annihilate the existence of a Jewish state in this area. And everything that is said beyond this is just to manipulate the people who listen to them and who don't listen to the undertone. And the undertone is very dangerous. So this exists all over Europe. You can see it all over Europe. The claim is, you know, we have it here as well. We had it here. We had some meetings. The annual peace forum that takes place in Helsinki, usually around September. Annual peace forum. I'm here now 4 years. I was never invited to this annual peace forum. It is always the Palestinians, those who are critical of Israel, those who deny Israel's existence, they are there. So what kind of peace do they want? They want a peace without Israel existing. And this is a sad story. This is an attitude that does not help trying to solve the problems that exist. And I cannot deny, and I would not deny, there are problems. We have problems. Maybe the other side doesn't like our policy, which is their good right. And maybe in some cases we could find a compromise. But when you don't want to talk, when you use the international community as a tool that will do the work for you, because by the time they succeed, let's say they succeed in wiping Israel off the map, I don't have to negotiate because there is no Israel. Now, if this is what the other side, and in this case the Palestinians, expect, I think they're wrong. Because at the end of the day, we will not deal with anybody about how we commit suicide. We don't need it, we don't intend to do it. And these powers, this is what they are after. They are not after helping the Palestinians because they don't help them. They are not after solving the problems of refugees in our area because they don't do anything about it. They are after one thing, bringing to an end this existence of this national state of the Jewish people. They don't want to see it. And this is what they do, and they use all kinds of tricks. And if we, or I should rather say you in Europe, fall into this pit, you're part of it, and you should be careful.
Yeah, we agree. Gregory, when you look at France, you have a special situation with the largest Jewish community in Europe. You're also in a special situation having the largest Muslim community in Europe. But not only that, you now have a party which many years ago were considered completely fringe, the Front National, which today is the third largest party and could be very well that in the next presidential election, Marine Le Pen would be one of the candidates. What is happening in France?
Well, I don't think I have the answer to that question. It is scary as a Frenchman to see this rise of anti-Semitism and at the same time this rise of the Front National. I agree, but I think that I want to be reassuring. I think it's when I see what the government of France today is saying, when we see what the Prime Minister Manuel Valls, when he made this incredible speech at the Parliament after the Charlie Hebdo and Hypercacher attacks. Remember, I was in my car driving home, and I had some phone calls, but I couldn't stop I couldn't pick up the phone calls because it was on the radio. There was his speech, and it was so wonderful. For once, we had someone standing up. And not going against any community, but standing up for the Jewish people and not tolerating this incredible thing that a Jew can be killed again in France for the sole reason of being a Jew. And I think this government has understood what is happening, the seriousness of this situation, and so I still hope that something can happen and that the French people can understand that this cannot happen again. But I still do not understand why so many people vote for Marine Le Pen. I think it's an economic reason, for economical reasons, but for the situation in Europe. But I think that with this government, there is some hope that something good can happen. We'll just have to see in the next presidential elections.
I think what many observers have said, including Bernard-Henri Lévy, is that if we compare the situation in the 1930s to today, there is a clear difference in that today the governments, by and large, are aware of the rise of anti-Semitism, whereas the problems really is on the street in civil society. But Ambassador Ashbel, with just a few minutes left of the program, do you think that the European governments are doing enough to stop anti-Semitism?
Well, let me add to your observation an additional observation. One major difference between the 30s and now is the existence of the State of Israel.
Right. Yes.
And the existence of the State of Israel that gives or that promises every Jew who wants to a homeland and to become a citizen of Israel. I mean, this is something that did not exist in the past. This is something that gives people who feel insecure, and I'm not going to go into the question whether a family that lives for so and so many centuries in a certain country in Europe should pack up its things and go to Israel, because some of these families don't like the idea, and that's their good right. But the fact that this possibility exists is important, and it is also important that the State of Israel, that myself representing the State of Israel in Finland and Estonia, can speak to the authorities and speak from the point of two states speaking to each other. Now, if you ask me if governments are doing enough, I mean, as a citizen, although I'm a public servant for the last 40 years, I think we should always expect governments to do more. So we should always ask from our governments more than what they do, because we believe they can do more. And this is the case in this case as well. But I think the important thing is the following, and I said it earlier. I think European governments should not fall into the pit of alleged or allegations and all kinds of beautiful words without checking what stand behind them. Because, I mean, you can preach in the name of peace, and then, I mean, I know no politician who will not use the word peace in his speech, right? They will always use the word peace. But the question is, what do you intend to do? And I believe that a clear position and a strong position of European government, of the European Union, of other organizations that clarifies we stand for values, and we stand for the values in Israel, in other countries, in every country, and we value them in the same way. Then you have a level field and you can do something. And this is what I think is the most important thing.
Thank you, Ambassador Ashbel and Gregory Lafitte from the European Coalition for Israel. Next month we will be back in the studios of the European Parliament for a new edition of the European Report. In the meantime, remember the words of Ambassador Ashbel and Gregory Lafitte. This is a time when we all have a responsibility to stand up against the rise of anti-Semitism, be it in France, be it in Finland, be it elsewhere in Europe. Thank you.